Welcome, everybody, to the Week 6 CFF Lists Waiver Watch Draft. I'm Jay Mill. I got my partner, Willie B, as usual. And it's a family affair today as we're joined by my son, Dorian. We'll give more introduction on him later. And Justin from Volume Pigs, which has made quite a splash on the CFF content scene. So we'll look forward to hearing more from him shortly. But as usual, we want to get in. We want to make this short and sweet, get right to the point. And we'll begin that with a recap of last week, where Willie B has found a little bit of redemption. I know he was disappointed in his couple last week performances. Since you did the honors of going through my team last week when I had the high score, Willie, how do you feel in general before I get into some of the details of who scored for you?
I picked Jamal Haynes last week because I just felt like he was, consistently putting up double-digit numbers, as far as the dual running back wide receiver role, and he let us down with his 6.8, which was the lowest of the whole squad that I had. So a little disappointed in that. Other than that, it went just like I thought it would.
Right, and for those that have been watching and those that maybe are new, Willie, with the exception of one position, hit all the marks we like to hit. We like to aim. We feel like 90 is kind of the standard barrier for having a good week. It seems to be the cutoff point for the guys at this point that are going to probably advance into our next round of semifinals. But we look for that 90 to come from trying to get at least a 20-point quarterback, 15-point running backs and receivers, and a 10-point tight end. And even though they were playing Minnesota, Willie hit with Zion Chris in his second week as the starter for the Raging Cajuns. He got him over 20 with 22. His running backs were really the strength with Michelle and Mahdi, which we kind of knew Michelle was going to be that guy as he's taken over, the key position in the Air Force offense in the backfield. But Mahdi was on fire. He had a 100-yard kick return. He had an 89-yard, technically pass, because it was like a shovel pass that he ended up fumbling, but he ran 89 yards on that one. So he ended up getting 52, 60, or 63 points from his running backs alone. As he mentioned, Jamal Haynes from Georgia Tech was really the only disappointment because Andrew Armstrong has become Mr. Consistency. He may not get you 30, but he's sure going to get you 18 or 17 every week, and he did that with 17. And then Michael Harrison has proven to still be that guy in the absence of Travis Hunter in their near comeback game, with his 16. So that gave Willie B 124.9 points, which I believe is our second highest score this year. Is that right, Willie?
That is correct, right behind yours.
Congratulations on that. That follows my big week the week before. I ended up actually getting third place with 75.6. We'll go through that in a minute, but congratulations to Justice. Kind of came through, in the clutch in the end with some good performances, some consistent games from K'Ron Adams from UMass, who, again, like Armstrong from Arkansas, hasn't been blowing it out of the water, but he's been really consistent, hitting that 15 to 18 mark, as a reliable, steady guy. And then Eric McAllister at receiver for Boise came through with nearly 15 points for him. But what really pushed Justice right now into that sixth spot in terms of those top six scores we're looking to bring to a semifinal round was the true freshman Jalen Rayner from Arkansas State putting up another game with 43, which gives him back-to-back 43-point performances in his first two Division I collegiate starts of his true freshman season. So Jalen Rayner is not to be slept on. He's proven he's the real deal. He probably won't come out of that lineup unless he's injured. My team, I put Castellanos back in. Again, when I've picked him the last 2 weeks, I've talked about his consistency. He's been a low 20s guy all year long. He hasn't had a game under 22, I think, that I can recall. I kind of got hurt at the running back spot. Gilliam ended up kind of playing more of a cleanup in Fresno. We'll get back to that, though. But then I hit on Malik Washington out of Virginia. So I had some more obvious picks that worked for me. The guys I took a chance on didn't quite work. I did find success with the tight end from Marshall, though, Cade Conley. Shout out to him. He got a touchdown that ended up helping them win the game. So Luke, not so hot. He did call the Bauer starting at Central Michigan, got him 20 points. And Lawrence Keys, had a decent showing at Tulane with his 15-6. But otherwise, Luke admitted he was going to take a few chances. Luke Haas went down, I think, with a season-ending injury at Arkansas, so beware of that. So he kind of got stuck there at tight end with the 2.4. Um, Willie, any final thoughts on the scores from everybody in general, or Justice moving into the top six? What do you think?
No, I thought it was a good showing. I mean, Justice, that tight end, Damos, and then Concepcion. Uh, if those were a little bit better, hell, he could have beat me most likely. So he just got a little unlucky. And then, like I say, with the Haas, I want to say that that's a collarbone. So it's probably likely he is gone for the season.
Right, right. So, with that, we want to jump into this week's guest pickers, give you a little bit of their background, and then jump into the fun part of every Sunday morning for us, which is the waiver watch draft. Um, we'll give a start to Justin from Volume Pigs. Like I mentioned in the intro, he's made a big splash this offseason with his extended kind of deep dive, detailed features on individual players or individual position groups, which has been really refreshing. He's really the opposite of us, I would describe. He gets really into the micro details where we like to cover kind of the broad lists and kind of pull back and give you the big picture. So it's really a nice balance when you have people out there doing a little bit of both. And Justin, you've definitely kind of, not kind of, you've definitely helped people with your deep dives. What made you take that route? And also welcome to the draft.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite. Yeah, as you mentioned, I started writing about CFF content earlier this year. I'll keep it brief because I know you want to hop right into the show.
Hmm.
Probably if you're watching the show, you probably already have seen my stuff. I'll most likely be tagged in the post when this goes on Twitter, so you can go on my profile, find the volume pics. It'll be pretty self-explanatory when you go to the website. So, yeah, looking forward to the show today. And yeah, appreciate the invite.
Well, let me just ask, so what did make you decide like to take the deeper dive? Because you do see a lot of us kind of just giving lists or giving little paragraph nuggets and tidbits. Yeah, what made you explore that area? Because that's a lot more work.
Sure. Yeah, that's just my style. Like that's just sort of the way I like to approach topics. I've been thinking about writing about CFF basically the last couple of years. I
Hmm.
kind of had this idea late 2021, but I just kind of was busy with work and things in 2022. So then this year I decided once January came around to take the plunge. One of my best friends kind of convinced me or gave me that final push to do it. So I just took the plunge and ran with it from there. So and yeah, in terms of the depth, that's just how I like to approach
That's how
the
you
topic.
roll. That's how you like to do it, right? Okay, good. And I will say, I probably would think we have some similar music taste based on the quotes. I know you like to kind of tie in musical lyrics, sometimes hip hop, sometimes not. But I love the fact that you kind of pull out a lyrical reference to tie into the article with just about everyone that I've seen. So yeah, it looks like you're a big music guy, also.
I love music. Yeah, no, I mean the articles very much are like CFF focused, but sort of like a window into my world almost. I mean, movie quotes, lyric quotes, just whatever, any quotes that I like, just to give it another sort of twist, just an extra sort of I don't know element of creativity. Just
Yeah.
allows me to express myself a little more.
All right, nice. Next, like I mentioned, it's a family affair this week. You have two Millers on board, but it's not just because of nepotism. Dorian is my son, my middle son. He's been actually helping us with CFF List behind the scenes, doing some of the recording and producing. But he's also a longtime, CFF fantasy player. I believe he started when my oldest was at Oklahoma in '08, and we were introduced to the concept of college fantasy football. He also played at Rutgers um, from 13 to 17 in that range. But yeah, Dorian, you've been in our home league, since '08, since the inception. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember. I think on my first fantasy team, I might have had like Jeremy Macklin,
There you
and
go.
kind of was capitalizing on some of the Missouri success with Chase Daniels and stuff. So,
Well, yeah, was
no,
that Heupel was the OC, I think, at Missouri back then. No, he was still at Oklahoma, and then he went to Missouri after that. Yeah.
yeah. But it's been cool to see how far college fantasy football has come. Community has grown. So it's really neat to be a part of this as well. And you guys are doing a great job. So
Oh, thank
hopefully,
you.
I could win, but just happy to be taking part of it and sharing some of my opinions.
All
So
right. Well,
I,
I've
hey,
mentioned.
so, sorry, Jeremy, hold on.
No, go ahead.
I
Go ahead, Will.
I remember 10-year-old Dorian begging to get into our pro fantasy league. And we
Right.
had to we had to say, okay, Dorian, we have an age limit. You have to at least wait till you're 13 to get in.
Right.
So,
And actually, I think he forced it. Like we created a rule because of Dorian. We said, yeah, we don't want a bunch of preteens in this league at some point. So we actually set up. We actually have a rule in our home league, NFL league, that
uh,
you have to be 13 to participate. 13 or older in our home league for the NFL. So, and all things.
but that's where it was cool. Just kind of having the experiences I've had. I've always some guys that play they don't really love football or don't really truly like it. So like that's what made like you having you guys and really being a fan of football. I think is what helped kind of push me
Right.
on the field sometimes too. So you can get lost in how difficult things could be sometimes, but at your core you remember, all right, I'm truly a fan of this. I'm just happy to experience the things I'm experiencing.
Right.
So
Right. Nice. Of intro, let's get into what everybody shows up for, which is the waiver watch draft. We have determined the order with the random.org site that I love to use. And Justin, you got loaded up as the 1.1, so we won't see you for another 5 picks after this. But who'd you lock in for this first pick since you got to think about it all night?
Yeah, so for the 1.1 pick, I think I'm going to go with Jacksonville State's running back Malik Jackson. I believe he's
Nice.
under 30% owned last time I checked. And the big reason for why is so, I mean, they started the season basically splitting carries between him and Ron Wiggins, but Ron Wiggins
Yeah.
sort of has a sustained injury. He's going to be out for at least a couple weeks. Certainly this weekend, I believe he's going to be out. And Malik Jackson lately has been seeing some really good volume in terms of carries, also receptions. He does sort of split work with the QB there. Logan Smothers also runs it a lot. So he's always, viable to steal a rushing touchdown here and there. But it's kind of dry the running back position. This exercise looking for players under 30%. So I
Right.
want to be the guy that I feel like I can be semi confident in actually getting the touch volume this weekend. So I'll go with Jackson.
Um, I was maybe thinking you might lean towards a couple of these good quarterbacks that are out there, but you touched on something which we actually also focused on last week. It seems that the running back position on the waiver wire is much more difficult than these other positions. So that's good awareness. Picking up Malik Jackson at the end of our show last week. None of us drafted him, but I mentioned that he was left over and one of those guys that I probably should have played because mine ended up failing me. And for the exact same reasons. He was splitting a role there. Wiggins is out. It seems like it's a little bit, long term. So Malik Jackson could be not just a good pick for this week, but for now that they're in conference play, for the rest of the season. So yeah, I like that pick a lot, and it's probably going to force me to go running back as well because there's only really 3 out of the 8 or 9 that I have on my list that I really like. So I'm going to follow suit, and I'm going to go Tyree Shelton from Louisiana Tech. Um, I like the volume, and again, I've been incorporating volume pig in my terminology as much as I can. I like to share that moniker now. And this is a guy, he had 24 points and 16 points the last 2 weeks, but he's gotten 16 carries in each of those. The Louisiana Tech backfield has been a little bit of a mess, strictly due to injuries, from the start of the season. But it looks like Shelton's, the number one guy at this point, with some injuries lingering with the rest of the guys in the backfield. I don't expect his load to fall off at all. But he's also had a touchdown in all 3 of his games, even when he wasn't getting the 16 carries. He managed to get to the end zone. So I'm going to go with a guy who's had over 100 yards the last 2 weeks, which is Tyree Shelton, against what Fantrax is calling the 111th worst defense against running backs in fantasy football. So I like that matchup a lot. And again, we're looking for guys that can produce right away. So not only because of his role in the offense, but because of the competition, I think Tyree Shelton will be that guy to get you at least 15 to 20 again this week at the running back spot. Willie, it's going to be on you.
All right, I said last night that I was going to go this position, so I'm still going to stick to that, even though you guys are taking um, running backs. I'm going to go Jalen Royals from Utah State. He had 43 and a half last night against UConn. He's a consistent seven catch guy. Probably won't get his 3 touchdowns, but like I say, we want consistency now. And with it dwindling as far as being under 30%, you got to get it. You got to get what you can when you can get it. So he's 2% owned. They go against Colorado State, who, I show them. Let's see, they're 129th nationally against the pass. So they give up 319 and a half yards passing a game. So there's going to be plenty to go around for Utah State.
Right. All right. Yeah, he was on my list. He was definitely a guy that, when I saw his name, I wasn't as familiar with him, but we've kind of got to get to the bottom of why Terrell Vaughn had no targets and no catches in a game where I think Willie pointed out he had 51 snaps also. So I don't know if they were just locking Terrell Vaughn down to the point that they forced Jalen Royals' hand, but seems like his role is going to increase as people tend to put a lot of the focus on making sure Terrell Vaughn isn't the guy that hurts them.
And what I liked about him is that he's getting the targets, but he's also getting the catches. So the week before against GMU, he had 12 targets and 7 receptions, and then last night he had 7 targets, he had 7 receptions. So you kind of like that. So that Dorian, you have back to back.
To start, I think I'm gonna change the pace a little bit. I'm gonna go with he's been a pretty popular pick. I'm gonna go with Jacob Zeno, quarterback from UAB.
Okay.
24% owned. We're playing USF this week. Well, first off, he kind of had just an average game last week. Didn't really find the end zone, but still completed 73% of his passes. But outside of that, he's been very productive. And then on top of that, USF has given up 300 plus pass yards to 3 of 5 of their opponents, and one of those is Florida A&M. So, last week they played Navy. So that if you look at their average on that end, that kind of brings their yards allowed down because Navy threw the ball 11 times. So,
right. And then you were mentioning his kind of low numbers this week, and he played Tulane if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I had a note too. Like prior to Tulane, where he had 8 this week, yeah, he was above 26 in every other game. So yeah, I don't think you're too off track there with Zeno. I think he should definitely bounce back. And Willie's been a big proponent of not playing anyone against Tulane because they have really proven to be a stout defense against the skill players. So that's don't be afraid of Zeno, I think is what Dorian's trying to tell us.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm a little surprised. He's not above that 30 yet either.
Yeah, it is surprising.
His production. And then for my second pick, I'm gonna go running back. It's a guy I've had my eye on throughout the season. Quentin Cooley from Liberty.
Okay.
He's coming off a 100-yard game. Running back Quentin Cooley. 6% owned. Coming off a 100-yard game last week. He's been Liberty's lead back throughout the season. He's been challenged a little bit in the backfield, shared carries at times, but main reason why I'm picking him is similar reason to Zeno. The team he's playing against, Sam Houston State, they're 118th in the country in yards, rush yards allowed per game. So I figured, I'm not scared of, even if, carries do get, split around or kind of shared. I think each guy will get whatever they need to get against Sam Houston State. So,
okay.
And I forget who Sam Houston State played last week, but I know they played a little tougher than expected. But
they had the game. It was the 2 new teams, Jacksonville State and Sam Houston State, went into overtime on the Thursday night game. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised they hung around because Jacksonville State has been a team that I think they're top 5 in the country in rush attempts per game. So
Right, right.
I was a
Yeah, they
little
look better than I
surprised.
thought they would. Also, I
Yeah.
haven't. That's an interesting topic for another day, another show. But yeah, I don't know one person that has one Sam Houston player in any lineups of anybody I've ever seen talking about anything.
No, I think I drafted their in our deep best ball league. I drafted their top receiver, but I ended up cutting
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, have you seen anybody own any Sam Houston? I know that Dorian picked a Liberty guy, but the fact that it just was interesting. I almost forgot they were in the FBS this year, because I haven't seen any player from Sam Houston on anybody's teams.
Yeah, no, I haven't encountered anybody who has their players, but they did have a couple of guys pop off this weekend. Tailback, I think his name
Yeah,
is Gentry.
Gentry or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, John Gentry, I think his name
Yeah, yeah.
is.
So we'll see if anybody grabs him later, but it could be a teaser. We'll find out. All right, good job, Dorian. Willie, back to you.
Yep, sticking to what I was saying last night. Well, we're gonna go wide receiver once again.
Hmm.
We're going to go Jalen Gill from Fresno State. Another high production guy. Last 3 games, 20.1, 23.1, and then last night 32.6. So consistency. He's scored in 4 of their 5 games thus far this season,
Okay.
and they go to Wyoming. Fantrax has them 75th against wide receivers. They are 77th nationally up against the pass.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why I feel safe going with Jalen Gill.
Okay. Yeah, he was another one. He was on my list, and these we're going to have a lot of shared names because by the time you get to the midpoint of the season, which unfortunately we're already approaching, the pickings get a little slimmer. But as we mentioned last week, you get more of a steady track record to see what guys are really about and kind of weed out the flukes versus the guys that are the real deal. We're also getting into a point where the way the effectiveness of guys will change as we shift into conference play, where you get more equal matchups. So even we've got a track record, but you can also see some guys who haven't performed as well step up because they're playing against equal competition, maybe instead of better competition, especially when it comes to the group of 5 guys. I'm going to just keep copying the guy that goes before me. Took a running back after Justin's running back pick. So I'm going to go receiver here to follow up Willie B's receiver pick because he's taken 2 that I had on my list already. I don't want to get into like the last 3 or 4 on my list. I'd rather take a guy who was in the top 3, which is Sean Atkins, SEAN, Sean Atkins from USF. He actually is a guy Dorian and I talked about this week. He's really been stepping his game up, and it's one of those teams where you didn't quite know who the target at USF was going to be or the number 1 target was going to be this year. And that's a role that seems to be shifting his way. He's averaging 16.1 on the season, but in his last 2 games, he's had 21 and 28 points. And more importantly for me, he's had 7.5 targets a game. So he's really becoming the prime target at USF, which is an offense we love, and mentioned, really stems from the Heupel disciple himself, Coach Golish. And they're starting to really get rolling and put up points, and I think you're going to just see Sean Atkins' role improve or increase even more than it has, and he'll be a guy that stays in the 20-point range, at receiver. And I can see Dorian's upset about that.
Yeah, I it's funny. I was thinking about drafting on my end, my first go around because I knew you would probably snatch him up. So yeah, he's a guy. I'm really surprised he's still at that low of a number. Especially when you think about some of those deeper leagues that exist. Like I would think at least maybe 5% owned,
Right.
or 5 to 10.
Yeah, what's his percentage at now? I know he was under 30, but I didn't note that. What is he at, Dorian?
Oh, he's at 1.
He's at 1.
He's at 1. That's a sin. That's sinful.
Yeah. No, he's been a guy. He's been consistent, and really, when for me personally, like what makes me feel like good, like going to sleep at night, fantasy wise, is knowing a guy is just steady.
Right.
And I'd rather take a guy that'll give me, 6 for 80 and maybe a touchdown versus a guy that just flashes and is kind of up and down. So
Exactly. All right, so back to you, Justin. You had a long time to kind of think about pick number two here, but you get pick two and three back to back.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna double tap at the wide receiver position.
Okay.
Some of the reasons that Dorian was just mentioning. I like guys who are pretty consistent at wide receiver, so I'm gonna go with Andrew Armstrong and Jordan Watkins.
Yep.
Andrew Armstrong, Arkansas, Watkins, the Ole Miss. Both these guys, they're playing each other this week.
Let's just do a quick check on kind of the Arkansas.
Oh, their numbers. I got
Arkansas
you.
67th, so that's solid. Mississippi is 114th. So yeah, as far as the defenses and where they land.
Pretty middle of the road, but
Yeah. Mississippi's is giving. We know from last night. They're really susceptible to giving up, yardage in the passing game.
well, no, and it's kind of like you guys were saying. Like, I just like that both of these players have been pretty consistent. Like,
Right.
Armstrong hasn't had a great game, but he's always
Right.
had good games. Watkins has had a few great games, but I don't think he's ever had a bad game yet. They're still pretty banged up there. I know they had all the receivers playing last night or last whatever Saturday,
Yeah.
but it still looks like Franklin's not quite 100%. Drake Harris, they're still sort of recovering. So Watkins still seems to be prominent in that offense.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'll just point out, another thing you were mentioning about players that we're surprised. I'm surprised that Jalen Gill, for Willie's pick, is only 14%. He was a guy, he had a big game week one. Usually people sort of flock week one to those big producers, and then the percentage goes up. But he's been really consistent all week.
Yeah.
All season. I'm surprised that he's still only at 14%.
Yeah, it's funny. Receivers are almost, I guess, because there are so many more receivers. Teams they have three or four receivers, and it's not always just one or two guys they're focused on. Washington's proven that, and you're looking for running backs that are literally the one guy getting the carries. The 20 plus carries, or at least the 15 plus carries. And yeah, my note on Gill, since we threw it back to him, is he's only had one game, I think, under 20 points, and that was against Eastern Washington, which was probably a blowout. So I would think that the only reason he didn't perform well in week two against Eastern Washington was because they were playing inferior competition. And then with your guys, Armstrong, um, that's the guy we talked about in the opening that Willie had last week that got him his 17 points, and he's only had one game under 17 points. Otherwise, it seems like he literally gets 17 or 18 points every single week. Andrew Armstrong, like he's about as consistent as it gets with the exact same number every single week.
Yeah, his consistency is shocking. I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't I've seen any other player like that.
Yeah, there are only three receiver spots left. I think I'll save room for Dorian to grab one next. I'll try to shift away here from receiver since I got the one that I really wanted. I'm going to go with the quarterback that I just don't want to lose because I feel like, when he got the job due to injury, he's taken full advantage, and that's Chandler Rogers at North Texas.
Interesting.
It looks like this Willie may not like that pick the way that he's 15. He's 15% owned. They're going against Navy, who's not,
He just gave up 44 to USF. Yeah.
And he had 21 points. He's averaging 21 a game, but that includes the first game of the season where he was splitting time with I think it was Earl, the guy who ended up winning the job, who ended up getting hurt. But in the three games as a starter, he's had 26, 24, and 33. So in my mind, he's averaging 27 points a game, which puts him right up there, in top 15 quarterback range. And it's an offense that we know is going to throw the ball around a lot. It's Navy. They gave up 44 points against another Florida team this week, if I'm not mistaken. Or against a Florida team this week, USF. So I think similar style offense where they're going to be throwing the heck out of the ball. Chandler Rogers is your guy for this week.
Good luck. I mean, he was not on my radar. That's for sure.
I guess I could have waited and taken. I guess I could have waited and taken my quarterback later. Then is what that tells.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I'm just saying that he wasn't on my radar, which is always nice this time of year when we're doing this.
Right. Okay. Well, keep an eye on him.
With that, this guy is on my list, and he is a dual threat guy. We're going to go, and I'm glad I didn't have to take him and put him at the wide receiver spot, but he is that good in my mind. But we're going to go Jacob Kabodi from Louisiana. He's a consistent scorer. He had 200-yard games previously. Yesterday against Minnesota, he only had 65 on the ground, but he also did get that touchdown, which he has 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks.
Right.
So
Right.
I was
it's
going
all
to say Minnesota's, they're good. They're a great gauge because they've been a top 20 defense in the country for the last, 3 to 4 years. So
Yeah, and he's
that's
he's
great.
um he's one of those interesting guys, kind of like Tracy from Purdue, where they're only getting 7 or 8 carries a game, but they're scoring touchdowns in every game with those carries. So they're, as they say, that he's very efficient with his carries and what he's doing with those carries because he's getting to the end zone. And it's, once you get past 3 games in a row with a touchdown, you begin to think, okay, it's not a fluke. They're going to figure out a way to use him at the goal line or near in the red zone. He was definitely a guy that was on my list. I shy away a little bit because of the lack of volume, but again, he's very efficient with what he does with the ball, and it doesn't seem to be hurting him so far. He's still averaging 15 a game. So it's there. Justin, yeah, you're nodding your head. Was he on your radar as well?
Yeah, yeah, I had him on my list. I figured he'd probably not make it back to me, so no
Yeah, I
surprise.
mean,
yeah,
he's not a volume thing.
he's a thicker guy. I mean, 6'1", 225. I mean, he's definitely, could probably be that goal line guy. And
Okay,
Texas State is susceptible to giving up a lot of points.
right, right.
So, you just
Yeah, I
got to
hadn't
take
looked at his
you got
height
to
and
take
weight.
your chances.
That even makes more sense to me now too. I hadn't looked at his height and weight, so it really makes sense that even though he's not getting as many carries, he's getting in the end zone with the 225 pounds. Dorian, back to back for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I gotta get a receiver. I'm gonna go with a guy that I actually picked up in our home league this week, and he had his best game of the season. Lewis Bond from Boston College, six
Mm-hmm.
percent
Hmm.
owned. They are playing Army this week, which I
Okay.
feel pretty good about. The Army has been better in recent years, but they've been in shootouts, with Wake Forest, and they're not it's not like a team I'm scared of. So, and then on top of that, I believe Ryan O'Keefe for Boston College, who I have in another league,
Mm-hmm.
was injured, and
Okay.
he's kind of 1B or their second option. So
Yeah, I hadn't
it's
seen
gonna.
that. Yeah, I didn't see O'Keefe got hurt. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I'm not 100% sure what the injury is, but it didn't, it seemed like he may be out. Uh,
It's a neck for him. So, he could be out,
yeah,
for a little bit, depending.
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and Bond is, like I said, he's coming off his best game, 7 for 104, TD, had his most targets in a game versus Virginia. And
Well,
he's
that
been
makes
pretty
sense. That makes
consistent.
sense if O'Keefe's hurt too, that would have happened this week.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's had a TD in all but one game this year. So,
Gotcha.
once again, another guy's, been consistent, 6% on. So definitely in your league, he should be available. So,
Right.
and for the next pick, I'm gonna go. I'm a little nervous about this one because I know, Dad, when I've spoken with you about Toledo, you're not a big fan of their backfield, but
Okay.
Jaquez Stewart,
Okay.
he just returned. Missed the last 2 games. Came back yesterday. Had 15 for 79 and a TD versus
Mm-hmm.
NIU. They are playing UMass this
No.
week. And he's 20. He's I believe 25% on. They're playing UMass. UMass is bottom quarter in the country of rush yards allowed. I think they're like 122nd. So I think once again same logic as Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of who gets the carries, it's going to be a team. They're probably going to steamroll, and the guys are going to get theirs. So I think Jaquez Store will be a beneficiary of that.
All right. Willie?
that was a guy that I was hoping would stick around. So
Yes.
that's a great pick there, Dorian.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
so I'm actually probably just going to leave that there, and hope that it gets back to me. Um, Man, that was actually a really good pick there, Dorian.
It looks like you took Tracy's pick, Dorian. This looks like
No, I mean, I mean, he didn't necessarily take it. I'm a little gun shy about taking this guy,
right.
only because he was just out of the blue, and I really don't want to say his name just yet, just in case I don't take him.
Oh no, I think
Well,
I might be. I know. I think I may know who you're talking about.
well,
Based
Yeah,
look,
off,
I
I
have
yeah,
to
got
interject really
running back.
quick.
I'm not. You know.
yeah,
In the fifth grade when I met Willie, he wisely told me back then, study long, study wrong.
yeah. So, um, I'm not going to double dip on my Fresno State. So
Yeah,
I'll just go ahead and take this guy. He did come out of the blue yesterday, but we're gonna go Kadarius Callaway from Old Dominion. Um,
oh yeah, okay,
he
okay,
had he had 11 carries, 236 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Let's say that they know more than we do, and there's a reason why they gave him that those
yeah,
carries. He only
yeah,
had five carries previously,
right.
all season long. So something was going on there. So maybe it's just time to unleash the kid.
Yeah, well, I'll make you
And,
feel I'll make you feel a little better about the pick because obviously it was Marshall, so I watched that entire game on the bigger TV than most probably had it on. And the kid wasn't a fluke. A lot of I think two of his big touchdowns though were like 50-plus yard touchdown runs, which is promising. That means he's got the speed. I mean, guys had angles on him and couldn't catch him. And he managed to have two runs, I think, over 50 yards for touchdowns. And it was shocking. As good as he looked watching that entire game, I was shocked to see he had only had five total carries up to this game. But there was a reason they gave him the ball 11 times yesterday. He and I looked him up. He's a JUCO guy that came from Eastern Mississippi, which is the first school they covered with Last Chance U. So he's kind of came from a highly acclaimed junior college that it's really a place where a lot of like the Alabama players get stashed while they're getting their grades in order and all that. And I think this guy might have even been an Alabama commit to begin with, but then went to Eastern Mississippi and now has made his way back, through Old Dominion. So I think he's just starting to get warmed up also, Willie, and used to kind of this level of competition. So I don't think it's a pick you should be worried about at all.
but some note, like I said, guys wear zero for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably that dude. So
Right.
Yeah.
looking at this, I have Cabody and Callaway. Both of them were zero. So
Okay.
let's see what happens this week.
So if you learn nothing from this, go pick up guys wearing number 0 this There you go.
In the skill position. I'm
It's
sorry to
skill
cut you off there,
Right.
Justin.
Yeah.
No, the stat line is just crazy. 21 yards per carry.
And just to add, he is a former Alabama guy. Yeah, he was a 4-star in high school from
Yeah,
Mississippi.
yeah.
He was like an athlete from high school, and I guess he's a running back now, right?
Yeah. And it looks like, one of those guys that just probably had to go to junior college and get his stuff together. And, Alabama was probably too deep at running back by the time he was ready to come back. So he's just going to do it the hard way through Old Dominion.
I mean, and if he's that fast, another 6 foot 217 guy. So
Yeah. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
it was
wow.
interesting because there were runs where I thought like, okay, he's now in DB territory. He's at that level, and the DBs have the angle. There's no way he's going to get to the end zone, and he got to the end zone twice, like that. So I'm going to go tight end, and I'm going to bring back the name we all loved in the preseason. It seems to be bouncing back, and that's David Martin Robinson from Temple.
Hmm.
He had 11 points and 10 to start the season. Then he had a 3-point game and a 0-point game, but he's back with 11. So, he's had double digits in 3 out of 5 weeks. I don't know what was happening in those two where he kind of fell off a little bit. He was a Thursday night showcase game, and I got to see him play. He was definitely targeted along with their other tight end, heavily on third down. So, he's definitely a key piece of this offense. And David Martin Robinson, again, was a name a lot of us hyped up in the offseason. I know Justin wrote about both of the tight ends, and I think potentially about how the other one might even be the better guy, and he looked good this week too. But I'm going to stick with Martin Robinson as my tight end.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so I guess I got back-to-back picks now.
Right.
I've got to give a hat tip to Willie on his number zero theory. I'll have to write an article, something about that. Interesting,
I
interesting.
like it.
Yeah, well, another number that's usually a good sign is the number one, especially at QB. We still had a tough matchup this week against Troy, but Jalen Raynor from Arkansas State.
Yep.
Obviously, you guys know he's been absolutely money the past couple weeks. One of you guys most likely selected him last week, I believe. Yeah, matchup is not good. That's the one thing, and I assume probably why you guys didn't draft him earlier. Troy has been kind of where quarterbacks have gone to die basically these past couple weeks in CFF. It's been rough, but I'm gonna bank on just the player. The player's been really good the past couple weeks. He has that dual credibility, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take a chance on Rainer. Go ahead.
I don't think it's a big chance. We mentioned the 2 games he started in his career as a true freshman this year have been 43 points each. So, I mean, if he gets you, 3/4 of that, you'll still be all right at 30. So,
Yeah.
And Troy is tough. I just like my guy a little bit better. But Raynor was the other one that I would have taken if somebody else had jumped on Rodgers for sure.
Yeah, well, I was thinking Zeno as well. Obviously, Dorian put them earlier. He's got a great matchup against USF,
Yep.
right? But yeah, and then as far as the next pick, I'm gonna go for running back. Tulsa's Anthony Watkins. So he now has back-to-back weeks of 20 carries or more. They kind of started the season off where Jordan Ford looked like the guy that they were going to use kind of as a bell cow. And then a couple of rough weeks in there, and then they've seemed to have transitioned over to Watkins. He's the guy who's been kind of their RB1A at least the last couple of weeks. And they have a nice matchup coming up. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but they play against FAU. I want to say FAU is not great against the run. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, let's get a check. We'll do it. You keep talking, we'll do a check.
I got it.
Fantrax has an 84th, but go ahead, Dorian.
I got them 95th in yards allowed.
Yeah, so it should be a good matchup. They should be able to establish the run. They keep giving him 20 carries. I don't see why he can't get 10, 15 points this week.
What I like about Justin is he doesn't even need to look at the chart, the rushing rankings and passing rankings. He just knows kind of from a general feel. Like I'm pretty sure FAU is not good against the run, and he was right. They're 95th against the run.
Oh, I was going to say a quick comment on the quarterback. I feel like this is one of those matchups where it could work in your favor. Troy is probably a better team than Arkansas State, and it could be up. They may be trailing. They need to throw. So,
the script could work out nicely there. So we'll see.
But I'll go ahead and grab my second wide receiver, which is another repeat guy. Again, there's nothing against the rules that says we can't bring guys back if they were on there last week. And Eric McAllister, I believe, is still under 30% from Boise. And that's another pick that Dorian and another player he and I have talked about. So I've probably just snatched 2 receivers from him from our private conversations.
You have.
Yeah, they're playing San Jose State, middle of the pack pass defense. He's showing some consistency there. I think he's a guy that is not going to explode and probably get you the 30-point game, but he'll get you that 15 to 20-point game from Boise, playing San Jose State.
Yeah, I was big on him to start the season. I think one of the things I try to do, especially because we play at such a I play at deeper leagues. Try to find those guys that maybe flashed the year before, and because of seniors graduating, guys leaving, more room opening up to be a starter. See who could maybe end up being like a number one guy for a team the next year to kind of fill a void. And he was definitely one of those guys. And I believe they had an injury in the off season that kind of helped open that up for him. But him, Jalen Lucas from Indiana is another guy. There's a ton of guys where if you just kind of read in between the lines, read like press clippings and hear, coaches talk, you could kind of spot some of those guys. So.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
I didn't even have him on my list. I didn't even realize he was under 30% still. But
Yeah.
I,
it's crazy. It's crazy.
And frankly, I probably wouldn't have known that either if he wasn't on the list last week, and I just wanted to see how much he had gone up.
Yeah.
Which he's 18% this week. Last week he was 8, so he's gradually. He probably won't be available next week, but he's gone from 8 to 18. I'd guess he probably gets up to 30 this week because again your pickings get a little more slim as we get into the midway point. So Willie, you don't need to take quarterback, so who are you going to grab at tight end?
You are correct, sir. I know he was your worst tight end pick, and it's going to be Tennessee State's Holden Willis
Right.
is who we're going to go with. He had 13 points this last week,
Yep.
and he had 26.8 the week before. So they get Jackson State. He's kind of middle of the road against the pass, but I just feel that Middle Tennessee State should have the better athletes, and Holden, he's got 17 targets in the last 2 games, so
Okay.
you just got to take that kind of volume from tight ends at this point.
Yeah, and he made me look bad this week in our best worst show. Out of the top 12 tight ends year to date, he made it into that list last week, and I picked him to have the worst week this past week, and he had another double-digit game. So what it showed me was he's probably not the flash in the pan that I thought he was going to be. He might be a little more consistent.
Yeah, he was fourth among the top 12
Top
tight
12.
ends.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And overall, it was another bad week for top 12 tight ends. I think another 6 went under 5 points. So that just seems to be like a common theme this year is if you make it into the top 12, there's a good chance you're going to have 5 or less points the next week. So, all right, Dorian, we're going to wrap it up with your last 2 picks.
Yeah, kind of had to make an audible going off the cuff here because Dad has stolen both of my receivers. Um, I'm very happy about this one because he's 0% rostered.
Okay.
Latrell Jones from Southern Miss, wide receiver.
Okay.
They're playing Old Dominion, who, as you guys were mentioning before, were in that shootout yesterday with Marshall. If you look at their scores, high scoring games, if you look at how they've played, how they fared versus receivers, they've allowed multiple receiving touchdowns in all but one game. And the one game that they didn't, it was a 10-9 game versus Texas A&M Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to think this is going to be another, high-scoring affair. I think Latrell Jones, he had 11 targets last week versus Texas State. I think he had 100 yards, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he had 6 for 124. Hasn't been a touchdown guy, but he's definitely in the last 3. He's had 7+ targets in each. So somebody to keep an eye on, and he's definitely available because he's 0% owned. And then,
Hold on one second, Dorian. Hey, we're gonna have to have you on a little bit more. You're pulling some names that I have no idea who they are.
Yeah,
So
no,
I appreciate
he's
that.
totally off my radar as well. So I'm going to be looking him up after this too.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys too. That was kind of a Hail Mary because a lot of the names that I had were taken. So, but I was like, wow, look at this guy.
Hey, you sold us on him. You made him sound good to us.
I mean, but 27 targets in the last 3 games, that's nothing to sneeze at right now.
No, and then seriously, if you look at that, like Old Dominion is allowing 30+ points to each quality team that they played.
Yeah.
So
they let Cam Fancher almost throw 300 yesterday on
exactly.
Wow, there you go, right there.
Yeah.
And then at tight end, I'm gonna go. It's a guy I've spoken about with my dad a little bit as well. Max Clare from Purdue. He is 12%. 12%. First 3 games, he was a lot more productive. But as we all know, like tight ends are very flash in the pan at times. I mean, it's rare you're going to get a guy that is going to get you, quality performance week in and week out. I'm just hoping he kind of game plan works in his favor. I see that Iowa doesn't fare the best against tight ends according to FanTrack. So yeah, just hoping he could give me at least 9 to 10 points. We'll see.
Yeah,
Only reason why I kind of stayed away from him, and I understand that their defensive ranking, but to me, I've always looked at it as if you are basically tight end, you should be able to stop tight ends. That's the part I don't understand is if the Iowa ranking is so bad,
I
they
agree.
should be able to stop the tight end. You would think.
I see three quarterbacks I still like. Let's see if you take any one of the three that I would have taken if I were you right now, Willie.
Yeah, I see three also. So we're gonna go ahead and go Zion Chris.
Is he still under 30?
He's still at 10.
That's startling.
Yeah, so they have, like I say, Texas State, who I have them 120th nationally, giving up 276 passing yards a game.
Mm-hmm.
His last three games, 33, 33, and then he had 22, and that was against Minnesota yesterday.
Right, yeah.
This should be a little bit better matchup for him.
And he's another guy that's gotten his opportunity due to injury, but now that he's in, he's clearly outperforming the guy that was there for him before with Woodridge.
Yeah, Woodridge, and another thing, I mean, he is that dual threat guy. I mean, so the last three games, he's got 6 carries, 11 carries, and 10 carries, and so he's gone over 70. Actually, he's gone over 100 yards 3 games ago against UAB, and then he's had 70 yards rushing the last 2 games.
Yeah, and he might have just played the toughest team they're going to play as far as defenses for the rest of the season. So he's not just a this week pickup. He's a guy that if you can get your hands on, which amazingly it seems like a lot of people should be able to still. Is one worth getting. Interesting, you didn't want to double up on Fresno, but you end up doubling up on the Raging Cajuns there. So that
right. I kind of there's going to be one guy, and I'm sure you're probably going to take him. I would have taken him also, but thinking that I could at least double dip on the rushing touchdowns with this backfield.
And I think another one of those games is going to be high scoring.
Yeah, that should be a fun game. That should actually be a pretty fun game to watch.
Yeah, fitting that you have two guys from Louisiana. I mean, Texas State gave up 34 to Jackson State, and I know once again it was a blowout, but they seem to be pretty giving.
But, so I've got to fill in my roster here with a running back. I've mentioned I'm not real pleased with what's left here. I think I'm going to go with Terrion Stewart from Bowling Green. He this week he had 26 carries and 24 points. The only game where he was really disappointing was against Michigan, and that was Bowling Green versus Michigan. So what do you expect? They're not going to play Michigan again. I like Terrion Stewart versus Miami, Ohio, who's a middle of the pack run defense. He's only 5% owned. He's flashed in past seasons, off and on. But I'm really impressed by the 26 carries he got this week. And he's had 16 points in at least 3 games this year. Like I said, the only bad one really was against Michigan. So I think he keeps it rolling and has the potential to get you 20 again, at least 15, for Terrion Stewart, Bowling Green.
Yeah, I was surprised at that game in general. I didn't realize, I didn't think that they were going to, did they end up beating Georgia Tech? Yeah, 38 to 27. Yeah, no, I was surprised. I think they were a 20-point underdog or something.
Yeah. All right, and it wasn't to me. It wasn't even as close as the 38-27 game that it was.
All right, we're going to let Justin finish it off, and then we'll have just really quick recap of maybe some players left over that we're surprised about. But Justin, go ahead and let's see who that magic tight end is that you're pulling out of your hat.
Sure. Yeah. Well, before I make my pick, let me just say, I cannot believe Zion Chris is under 30%. Had I known he was still available, probably I would have drafted him for the Raiders. So, again, hat tip to Willie on that one. I guess I need a tight end. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame's Mitchell Evans. In the last couple of weeks, he's kind of come on. I know he's had a good game the last couple of weeks. Again, he had a good game before that. He's kind of come on as their tight end one over there. They had another guy early on in the season who was kind of soaking up some of their targets, but now it seems like he's kind of their
Yep.
go-to tight end. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I was going to say he was a guy on my tight end list. Um, he's playing against Louisville, but I don't think it really matters. He's had 15 and 19 points the last 2 weeks. 19 last night, I think, with 7 and 6 catches. I think the other guy was Says, Saes, or something like that, and he
Yeah,
seems to have fallen to the wayside. And Mitchell Evans is the guy we thought would be number one going into the season, and it looks like it's kind of trending that way. So yeah, he was probably number 2 on my list of tight ends this week. So I like that pick a lot. So
he's been consistent for a couple weeks in a row. If he can just get me 10 points, I'm happy with that.
yeah. Yeah, that's all we say. We're nowadays. I think we're okay with 8 points from a tight end, to be honest, because it's been so difficult. But we've gone just a tad bit longer than we like to here, but hopefully it's good information for everybody. But with that, we'll do kind of a rapid fire round. We'll start it off with you, Willie, because you know how we like to do this. Kind of set the trend here in like 60 seconds or less. Who are a couple guys that you're surprised are still on the list, or that you have left on your list that didn't get taken?
The other quarterback that I probably should have taken, but I love the Chris pick that I made, but it's Braden Fowler Nicolosi
Yep.
from Colorado State, 11% owned. They have Utah State, who is 94th nationally against the pass.
Right.
Logan Smothers from Jacksonville State is another guy, and then if you really need a guy, Joey Aguilar from App State,
Right.
9%.
Justin, you got anybody left over from your list that we'd be intrigued by?
Yeah, it kind of came to mind when we were talking about the Georgia Tech versus Bowling Green game last Saturday. So you mentioned, yeah, Stewart sort of ripped G Tech apart. They play Miami this weekend, and Henry Parrish Jr. Had a pretty good
Right.
game for them a couple weeks ago. He's kind of like forgotten about because they were on bye week last week. But
Right.
I believe he saw around 19 or so carries, so good carry volume.
Yep.
They should have a pretty good time in terms of establishing the run versus Georgia Tech this weekend. So he'd be another running back, I think. Like
Yep.
he had to run somebody in, probably not a bad play this week.
Yeah, I almost pulled the trigger on him. He's a guy that I thought would be their guy this year. Got caught up in a little bit of committee situation, but it's always painful when you see a guy get 24 carries and then have a bye, because you have to kind of keep your fingers crossed that things don't change during the bye week and they try to out game plan themselves. But I'm with you. I think Parrish is the best back in that backfield still, even with a lot of good ones around him. But I like it. Dorian, you got anybody you want to leave us with that you didn't get to take or none of us took?
Yeah, just one guy, Anthony Hankerson from Colorado. I was hoping I didn't need to take him, but he was kind of my fail safe. He flashed against USC yesterday. I am a fan of picking him up in maybe a deeper league just to see how it goes, because I think he has been a little more poppy than Dylan Edwards. And obviously everybody's talked about their O-line being at a disadvantage, but I think they're finally going to hit their stride again now that they've gotten through these, last 2 tough opponents, USC and Oregon. So I think you just see a lot more production consistently out of that offense, and from a variety of guys. So 1% own, worth a shot if you're just kind of searching for a running back in a deep league. See what happens.
Surprisingly, I've got 2 more tight ends that I think are worth investigating. You've got Tanner McLaughlin at Arizona, who's had double-digit scoring in the last 3 weeks without a touchdown, and that seems to be a theme I've pushed every week. Is if you can get double digits from a tight end without a touchdown, like with his 5 catches for 50 yards or something like that, it's just a bonus when they can find the end zone. And they're playing USC, but USC seems to be, giving tight ends, an opportunity.
No, yeah, they do. I read somewhere that they were allowing, they were pretty bad at allowing explosive plays, and pass defense, was tough. Like, I saw somebody kind of predict what happened yesterday, because they had played such average offenses and still allowed a good amount of explosive plays, in the air. So
yeah, and the Arizona pass offense is, dare I say, as good as the Colorado pass offense. With well, we got to see how Dolores' health is too. But McLaughlin has had double digits the last 3 weeks. Mazzotti from San Jose State might be a surprising name, but
That's the one.
Olson, his counterpart there, who kind of, they go back and forth with who has the big games. Olson has been hurt. Track Olson. If Olson's still injured, jump on Mazzotti at tight end from San Jose State.
I only had 4 running backs on my list, and the other one is going to be Bracial Tootin, Virginia Tech's running back.
I had him too.
Like
That's the only other running back I had that was not taken because I had 4 on my list, and he's 17% owned. He's averaging 14.7 a game.
He had 24 carries last week, so he is your volume pig to keep an eye on. So with that, we will transition to the outro. We want to thank my son Dorian, Willie B. Glad you stopped in again. Thanks for always dealing with me. And then Justin, if you want to, let us know what to look out for this week. I know you've been doing the weekly show with Jared over at Chasing the Natty. What else can we expect from you this week on Twitter or your website and elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me just say again, really appreciate the invite. It's sort of it's a really neat concept you guys going here. This was fun. I hope to do it again sometime in the future. Yeah, as you mentioned, I do the show with Jared that releases Wednesday mornings. I release articles on my website usually every other day. So I usually do a waiver wire edition.
Okay.
A weekly recap, usually in the midweek. I do some DFS stuff sometimes every other week. And I do, as you were mentioning, sort of individual team profiles, player profiles. So a couple of days ago, I did one on BYU's running back, LJ Martin.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens this week. I got a new article idea from Willie, the number zero theory. Maybe I'll update that a little bit. I'm just writing about CFF stuff every other day. I release a new article. Yep, if you want to check it out, find me on Twitter.
And that website is volumepigs.com. And Justin is on Twitter at volumepigs. Dorian, what will you be up to this week?
I'll probably be doing clips for this podcast. You can find me along with the other two gentlemen at CFF List. The handles. On Twitter. Is Instagram still?
Instagram. We are College Fantasy Football.
College Fantasy Football. Yeah. That's right. So I'll be doing that. Hopefully, trying to find 0% roster guys that I could, bid on or not have to bid on in leagues. And
put those $0 bids on.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, thanks, and it's been great information all across the board. Justin, we may not have even explained this to you. If you make it into our top 6 from the guest pickers, which right now I think that magic number is about 84.3 for the number 6 spot, we'd love to have you back for we do like a 3-week semifinal round where then the top 2 out of that top 6 would make it to a final showdown. So good luck. We'd love to have you back. So I'm hoping you can make your way into the top 6 and we can talk to you again in either week 8, 9, or 10.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, that's good to know. Fingers crossed. Hopefully my guys don't let me down this week. I would love to hop back on for the semifinal playoffs.
All right. Willie, any final words?
Thank you for watching or listening, and good luck this week.
All right.